Indonesia, the largest island nation on Earth. Over 17,000 islands stretch across the Pacific and Indian Oceans, scattered like stepping stones between Asia and Australia. The country sits on the Ring of Fire, with over 120 active volcanoes, and entire islands have risen from eruptions. The largest volcanic lake was born from an explosion so powerful, it changed the global climate. Yet out of this unstable land came empires. Spice kingdoms ruled the trade winds. Sultanates rose and fell. Then came the Dutch. 3 centuries of colonial control until independence was declared in 1945. But freedom brought new challenges. In 2004, a tsunami struck Aceh with unimaginable force. More than 160,000 lives were lost, and entire towns disappeared. It was one of the worst natural disasters in modern history, and still, this country holds. Today, it's the world's 4th most populous country, home to over 275 million people, 700 languages, and hundreds of ethnic groups. Indonesia is one of just 17 mega-diverse nations. The only place where orangutans, Komodo dragons, and tarsiers still survive in the wild. Where over half the world's coral species live beneath the waves, and where ceremony and survival are often the same thing. From rice terraces carved by hand, to waters so rich they bloom with color, this country is as human as it is wild. These are the wonders of Indonesia. Kawah Ijen. Rising 2,799 meters in the highlands of East Java, one of the world's most surreal natural wonders comes alive. Before dawn, flickering blue flames dance across the crater floor of Kawah Ijen, ignited by sulfuric gases escaping from deep fissures. This rare phenomenon exists in only a few places on Earth, but reaching it isn't easy. The 3-kilometer trail climbs 500 meters in elevation, demanding a steep and rugged ascent that takes 1.5 to 2 hours. Yet for those who make the climb, the reward is unmatched. Sweeping views of the volcanic plateau, misty forests, and the eerie glow of the blue flames. But as the sun rises, the crater reveals its greatest spectacle: the largest acidic crater lake on Earth. Its vivid turquoise waters are as beautiful as they are deadly. They dissolve metal and create toxic fumes that linger in the air. Despite these harsh conditions, miners descend into the crater to harvest bright yellow sulfur, a mineral used in fertilizers, cosmetics, and chemical production. With little protection, they break apart hardened deposits with hand tools, carrying loads over 70 kilograms up the steep slopes while inhaling fumes that burn their lungs and eyes, enduring these risks just to make a living in one of the world's harshest workplaces. Kawah Ijen is truly a land of extremes, a place where beauty and danger coexist, and where those who reach the summit witness a sight few will ever forget. Raja Ampat. Nearly 1,500 limestone islands rise from waters so clear they seem almost unreal. Welcome to one of the last truly wild places on Earth. Raja Ampat sits in the far east of Indonesia, where the Pacific and Indian Oceans meet. The name means Four Kings, named after its main islands, Wagio, Salawati, Batanta, and Masul. But those are just the beginning. There are hundreds more, covered in jungle, lined with cliffs, or barely more than sand and stone. Hidden between these islands is Love Heart Lagoon, a quiet cove shaped like a perfect heart. It's carved into the limestone on Masul and tucked behind steep rock walls, only reachable by boat. But Raja Ampat's true magic begins beneath the surface. This is the center of the Coral Triangle, the most biodiverse marine region on Earth. Over 75% of all known coral species live here, along with thousands of reef fish, sea turtles, and manta rays. In some bays, you can snorkel from the shore and see more life than in entire stretches of open ocean. In deeper waters, divers drift beside coral-covered walls that drop into darkness, watching fish move through sunbeams like threads in a loom. Even after decades of research, scientists still find new species here every year. Raja Ampat feels like a living museum of the natural world, but that isolation is fragile. Rising sea levels and warming oceans are slowly changing the balance, though local communities and conservation groups are working to protect what's left. For now, the islands remain as they've always been, still wild. It's what the world once was, and what few places still are. Bukit Lawang. Only 2 places on Earth still have large numbers of wild orangutans, and one of them begins at the edge of a river, in a village called Bukit Lawang. Set along the banks of the Bohorak River, Bukit Lawang is a narrow village carved into the jungle. Guest houses cling to the hillsides, small paths wind between cafes, and suspension bridges sway gently above the rushing water. The river cuts through it all, fast-moving and clear, separating village life from the dense forest on the other side. Cross the bridge, and the world changes. The trees grow taller, the trail narrows, and with a bit of quiet luck, the forest begins to move. In the canopy above live Thomas's leaf monkeys, found only in northern Sumatra. They travel in small groups, easy to spot by their tall mohawks and expressive white faces. Each movement is quick but careful, and when they pause, their white faces hold a depth of focus that feels almost human. Unlike many primates, these monkeys are known for their quiet presence and complex social behaviors. Watching them doesn't feel like watching at all. It feels like being noticed. But it's the orangutans that most come to see. In this forest, they've learned to live again. Once nearly wiped out by poaching and deforestation, they were rescued and released here, starting in the 1970s when Bukit Lawang became a rehabilitation center. Many still live close, along with their wild-born children. You might see a mother with her baby clinging to her chest, moving carefully through the trees. They stop to peel fruit, to rest, or just to look back at the world below. In Bukit Lawang, the line between observer and observed begins to blur, and you're left with the sense that these great apes are not just surviving here, but remembering something ancient we've long forgotten. Lombok. The ocean draws an invisible boundary through this part of the world, a line that divides the wildlife of Asia from that of Australasia. Lombok sits just east of it. What grows here, what moves here, and even how people live here feels shaped by that line. It's close to Bali, but different in nearly every way. The land is wilder and deeply tied to the mountain at its center. In the north, the Senaru rice terraces rise in layers, each one cut clean into the hillside like steps in a massive green staircase. When the fields are flooded, the terraces shine, turning the landscape into a series of glowing, mirrored tiers. The ridges are narrow but strong, guiding the flow of water down from one level to the next in a precise centuries-old system. From a distance, it looks seamless, just green upon green, but it's a balance that's always at risk. A heavy rain or a single broken wall can collapse the entire structure. Just beyond the fields, Sendang-Gile waterfall crashes through the forest in 2 stages. The upper fall drops from a tall cliff face, then hits a rock ledge and spills again into a wide, shallow basin. From the viewing point near the edge, you can see the entire cascade at once. A wooden heart-shaped frame marks the spot where many pause to take it all in. The air feels cool and damp, and the longer you stand there, the more the noise fades into something calm. Tucked in a high valley surrounded by farms lies Sembalan village. From above, the land spreads out like a mosaic, squares and rectangles of green, yellow, and brown. The soil here is dark and rich, left behind by ancient eruptions. Neat rows of garlic, onions, and chilies stretch across the valley floor, divided by narrow dirt tracks and low stone walls. Sembalun is known as a gateway. From here, many begin their climb toward Mount Rinjani. Deeper in the hills, Kertaganga waterfall drops nearly 30 meters through a rocky staircase of pools. A narrow footbridge crosses above the lower cascade, high enough that you can stand and watch the water tumble beneath you, framed by green hills on every side. On the coast, Lombok Bay curves in a wide sweeping arc, its shoreline bending like a crescent carved by the tide. The sea here is calm, shielded by the shape of the island, and the water shifts between pale turquoise and deep blue. The bay defines how the island meets the sea, open, shaped by erosion and time, and tied to how people move, fish, and live. From the edge of the island, the world feels very far away. Yogyakarta. They call it Yogyakarta, but most here just say Jogja. It isn't the capital, but it's long been considered the cultural heart of Java. It's one of the oldest cities in Indonesia, still ruled by a sultan. Many here still see the monarchy as part of everyday life. Most of the people in Yogyakarta are ethnic Javanese, and their culture runs deep, built around community and strong ties to family and faith. In open pavilions and small stages, traditional court dances are still taught and performed. The dancers wear gold-threaded batik, their faces expressionless. In the center of the city stands the Yogyakarta Monument, a white obelisk rising just over 15 meters tall. It was first built in 1755, a symbol of spiritual unity between the Sultan and the people. Today, traffic circles it on all sides, but it still marks the city's core. Out on the northern horizon stands something far more dangerous. Mount Merapi, the mountain of fire, is one of the most active volcanoes in Indonesia. It last erupted in 2021, sending ash 5 kilometers into the sky. Villages on its slopes live with the threat of pyroclastic flows, and trails that were once scenic now pass by ruins buried in ash. But despite the risk, the land remains occupied, fertile from past eruptions, and sacred to many who call it home. There are rice fields here that stretch almost to the base of the mountain. The terraces cut along the hills in clean green steps, dug by hand and maintained season after season. Workers move through them in rows, planting seedlings with practiced speed. One of the strangest landmarks in the region stands just outside the main city, known as Stonehenge, Yogyakarta. It was built after the 2006 earthquake using slabs of volcanic rock from the disaster. The structure mimics the English original, but in a tropical setting. It's become a reminder of how the land here breaks and how people rebuild with what's left behind. That idea continues at Tabing Breaksea Jogja, once a limestone mine, now a cultural site. After mining stopped in 2014, local artists began carving the exposed cliffs into reliefs of dragons, guardians, and Javanese mythology. The cliffs at Keserat rise tall and sheer, dropping straight into the open sea with no barrier between land and sky. There is no beach, only exposed rock and crashing waves far below. From the cliffside, the view stretches endlessly across the Indian Ocean. Though remote, it's become a space where nature and spirituality quietly meet. This stepped waterfall looks almost man-made, and that's because it is. Grojogan Watu Purbo flows over 6 wide terraces of stone, framed by forest and often shrouded in mist. Originally built as a dam and irrigation barrier, it now serves both function and beauty. Drini Beach curves gently along the southern coast, with calm waters and soft golden sand. The beach takes its name from the Drini tree, which grows along the cliffs and is used in traditional medicine. At the edge lies the Rock Island, a steep, green-covered outcrop that rises abruptly from the sea. During low tide, it becomes accessible by foot, once believed to divide the dangerous sea from the safer inner bay. The city of Yogyakarta is always changing, but never lost. Tumpak Sewu Waterfalls. Its name means 1,000 waterfalls, and from the cliffs above, it almost feels true. Tucked into the Lumajang Regency of East Java, Tumpak Sewu is a wide semicircle of cascades, spilling down 120 meters into a vast green basin. The water seems to fall in waves, dozens of thin veils, dropping in unison. This natural amphitheater was shaped by the Glidik River, which flows directly from Mount Semeru, Indonesia's tallest and most active volcano. The surrounding landscape is volcanic at its core, constantly sculpted by erosion, ash, and rainfall. That's what gives the canyon its steep walls, and the falls their sheer breadth. Mist gathers at the bottom, swirling around the rocks and drifting through the trees. When the light hits, just right, it glows, turning the canyon into something almost dreamlike. this is more than just a waterfall. It's a force of nature. Nusa Penida. They used to say Nusa Penida was cursed, a place of exile, home to dark spirits. It sits just southeast of Bali, but for centuries, it remained untouched. Cliffs rise sharp and sheer, dropping into seas that shift from pale turquoise to deep navy. On the western side lies Broken Beach, a collapsed sea cave that forms a near-perfect ring of stone. The ocean flows through a narrow opening in the cliff, filling the pool below with blue-green water. There's no way down, only a slim trail circling the rim, where visitors move quietly, staring into the stillness. Farther east, the land grows drier and more exposed. The trail to Ahtu Cliff climbs through brush and broken stone until the view opens suddenly and wide. On the edge sits Rumah Pohon Molenteng, a cluster of wooden tree houses built on stilts, perched just above the sea. They were built by locals, first as a lookout spot, then slowly transformed into a resting place for travelers. Now, they're used by visitors who want to stay the night in silence, surrounded by nothing but sky and sea. And then, there's Ka Linking Beach, the island's most famous and most unforgiving place. From the top, the cliff bends like the spine of a beast, reaching out into the ocean. The descent is steep and dangerous, with wooden railings tied together with rope. Those who make it to the bottom find a beach that feels completely cut off. Golden sand, towering cliffs, and waves too strong to swim. The island feels different, but it's beautiful in a way that feels pure. Pura Gunung Cemeng Temple. On the western edge of Nusa Penida, in the village of Bunga Mekar, a small temple clings to a narrow green ridge that stretches out into the sea. This is Pura Gunung Cemeng, perched high above the water where the land drops steeply on both sides and the coastline stretches far into the distance. Surrounded by trees and far from busy roads, the temple feels quiet and alone. Its name means Black Mountain, but the meaning isn't about color. In Balinese belief, black stands for stillness, reflection, and spiritual energy. The temple isn't used for big ceremonies. It's meant for small offerings and silent prayer. The temple itself is simple: stone steps, small shrines, and mossy paths that lead through the trees. From the edge, you can see the ocean in every direction, crashing against the cliffs far below. Most people come alone, not for a tour, but to find peace. In Bali, Many temples are built on mountains to feel closer to the gods. But here, where the land reaches straight into the sea, it feels like sky, earth, and water are all connected. Sumba Island. They call it the Forgotten Island, not because it lacks history, but because its stories are rarely heard beyond its shores. Sumba sits far from Indonesia's usual travel routes. It's part of East Nusa Tenggara, but isolation has preserved something rare. While other islands have changed with time, Sumba has held on to its oldest traditions, rituals, beliefs, and ways of living passed down through generations. People here live close to the land, guided by Marapu, a cultural belief system that honors ancestors and nature's balance. The line between life and spirit is not sharp. Everything is connected, and the island itself is part of that sacred world. Nowhere are these traditions more visible than in Ratenggaro, a coastal village on the western edge of the island. Tall wooden homes called Umamambatangu rise above the earth like watchtowers. Each roof climbs high, built to connect the living with those who came before. Between the homes, large stone megaliths mark the resting places of chiefs and ancestors. Families still gather here for ceremonies that blend prayer, offering, and dance. Acts not for show, but for balance. Water shapes this island too, but in smaller, sharper ways. Rivers don't run wide, they cut deep, and where the cliffs break, waterfalls form. Waikachura is one of the smallest, but the setting is unreal. It flows quietly across wide, flat terraces, natural steps carved into the rock by centuries of rain. The water spreads thin here, just a few inches deep in places, catching the light as it moves over moss and stone. It's surrounded by rice fields and soft hills, with no clear border between nature and farmland. Tenggadu Waterfall takes more effort to reach. It's tucked inland, far from the main roads, and the only way in is a long, bumpy drive followed by a steep hike. The walls rise on either side in jagged, stratified layers, as if the rocks were stacked by hand. The water is strikingly clear, tinted pale turquoise and deep green in the shade. It slips over smooth rock shelves and curls through narrow bends, forming natural pools that reflect the sky like glass. But none sits in a hidden chamber like Warna-Warni Waterfall. The path down is steep and slippery, winding through dense trees before opening into a secluded basin. At the bottom lies a deep, round pool where water drops straight into a bowl of rock. The surface glows blue-green, lit softly by the fractured sunlight that filters through the canopy. The silence here is different. Some believe places like this are watched, guarded by ancestral spirits who still linger. In the dry season, the hills turn gold. Rinjani is one of the most photographed, but the feeling doesn't always translate. It's not just the shape of the land, it's the space, open, empty, and wide. The hills roll out like waves, each one soft and sloping. From the top, you can see the land stretch for miles, broken only by the shadows of passing clouds. Closer to the water, the coast sharpens. Mandorak Beach is small but powerful. The cove is framed by dark rock cliffs, and the water crashes hard against them. The sand is soft, almost white, but the waves never stay calm for long. In contrast, Waikuri Lagoon sits still and clear, trapped between coral rock and forest. To get there, you follow a narrow path that winds through dry brush and uneven stone. The surface barely ripples, even when the ocean nearby is rough. Rock formations rise around the edge, forming natural ledges and small drops where the stone has been worn smooth. This is how Sumba reveals itself, piece by piece, each one shaped by the same forces that shaped the people who live here. Kampung Warna-Warni. Not long ago, this hillside neighborhood was just another run-down village on the edge of Malang. Rows of worn gray homes crowded along the Brantas River. Then, in 2016, a group of university students teamed up with local residents and transformed it with paint. Hundreds of houses were coated in bright stripes, polka dots, and murals, colors spilling across rooftops and walls like confetti. They call it Kampung Warna-Warni, the Rainbow Village. What began as an effort to clean up the area became something larger. Tourists started visiting, residents opened stalls, and the project inspired nearby neighborhoods to do the same. In a city known more for its traffic and sprawl, the village stands out, not just for its color, but for what it says, that even the most overlooked places can be seen again. Mount Rinjani. Clouds drift along the rim. Steam rises from the crater. And in the center, a new volcano is forming, quietly growing from within. Mount Rinjani stands tall over Lombok at 3,726 meters. Its wide slopes stretch across the island's northern region, and its summit holds one of the largest calderas in Indonesia, almost 10 kilometers across. The crater was formed by a series of powerful eruptions that changed the shape of the land. Inside this massive basin lies Segara Anak, a crater lake whose name means child of the sea. Its colors shift with the sunlight, deep blue at times, pale green at others. Hot springs flow into the lake, and at its center, Gunung Baru Jari continues to grow, little by little. Climbing to the rim takes several hours. The trail passes through rainforest, steep ridges, and loose volcanic rock, revealing more of the mountain with every step. For the Sasak people, this place is sacred. They believe the lake is home to Dewi Anjani, a mountain spirit who protects the land. Even today, people come here to leave offerings for health, forgiveness, or guidance. Every part of the mountain shows motion. What seems permanent is only passing through. And while there are taller peaks in Indonesia, none command space like this. Jakarta. Over 30 million people live in and around Jakarta, making it one of the most crowded cities in the world. It's the capital of Indonesia, the center of politics, finance, and media, and the most complex city the country has ever built. Towers rise from ground that was once swamp and shoreline. What used to be mangroves and rice fields is now steel and concrete. By day, the skyline glints sharp and silver. At night, its lights flicker through smog and rain, casting shadows across rivers and highways. But the ground tells a different story. Jakarta was built on soft delta soil, where 13 rivers push toward the coast. Much of the city sits at or below sea level, but with every rainy season, neighborhoods flood. While the city depends on seawalls and pumps, even those are starting to fail. Yet even in this, Jakarta never stops. The National Monument stands at its center, a 132-meter pillar topped with a golden flame. Built after independence, it marks the birth of the nation and the cost of holding it together. The Sumangi Bridge wraps the skyline in a figure-8 loop, a legacy of 1960s urban planning, now surrounded by office towers and malls. Below it, Sumangi Park offers a rare open space. Trees, grass, and benches set against the roar of cars. In a city this dense, small pockets of green carry more weight than they seem, seen in places like Tibet Eco Park. Once a flooded greenbelt, it's now a redesigned wetland, where runners pass by sculpted paths, and native plants filter water back into the ground. At one of Jakarta's busiest intersections sits Bundaran HA, a wide traffic circle wrapped around a tall fountain and a pair of bronze figures lifting their arms in welcome. The water shoots upward in clean bursts, and roads spin out from every side. Celebrations erupt here, protests gather, and at rush hour, it becomes a tide of movement, noise, and everything Jakarta is trying to hold together. Plans are already underway to move the capital to Nusantara, to start fresh in a place not weighed down by water and crowding. But Jakarta doesn't disappear that easily. It's too rooted in the country's story. It's not perfect. It was never supposed to be, but it endures. Borobudur Temple. Built over 1,000 years ago during the Sailendra dynasty, Borobudur is the largest Buddhist temple in the world. For centuries, it vanished, buried in volcanic ash, swallowed by jungle and forgotten by the world. In the 1800s, it was uncovered. Piece by piece, a massive stone mandala rising from the heart of central Java. The temple climbs in 9 stacked platforms, square at the base, circular at the top. Along its walls are more than 2,600 carved reliefs, telling stories of kings, villages, and beliefs long past. Over 500 Buddha statues sit across the terraces, some enclosed in lattice stupas, others gazing silently out toward the horizon. Their expressions are calm, their silence eternal. Each level rises with purpose, guiding the eye and the mind from the physical to the spiritual. At sunrise, the stone turns gold, fog clings to the valley, and the air holds still, thick with memory. Borobudur was never meant to last forever, but somehow it did. Flores. Along the volatile ring of fire, where the Indo-Australian plate dives beneath the Eurasian plate, Flores was built by the movement of the earth. The land was steep, narrow, and unstable, but it also became fertile. Volcanic ash feeds the soil, and lava flows become farmland. The island's name comes from the Portuguese word for flowers. It stretches over 350 kilometers, and across that distance, dozens of ethnic groups call it home, from the Mungarai in the west to the Leo in the east. In Ruteng, the land opens into spiderweb rice fields called Linko. The lines were drawn by the hands of ancestors. Each family gets a piece handed down through the generations. It's a system that once fed entire villages. Farming is still done by hand, if someone stays to do it, but many don't. The village of Wae Rechbo sits high in the mountains. 7 tall houses rise from the grass, each one shaped like a cone with steep thatched roofs that nearly touch the ground. They're called Baru Niang, built from wood and palm fiber to withstand rain and wind. The people here are Munggarai, and their ancestors are said to have settled in these hills centuries ago. From here, the land stretches outward and upward to places more exposed and demanding. Mount Inari rises alone, sharp, steep, and shaped like a perfect triangle. Deep grooves cut down its sides, left by lava and rain over generations. At the summit, you're high above everything, but the mountain still feels bigger than you. Farther east, where the island narrows and the hills pull closer together, is Mount Kelimutu, a quiet volcano with 3 crater lakes that change color without warning. The lakes sit side by side, sometimes green, sometimes black or deep turquoise. Scientists say it's because of volcanic minerals and oxygen levels, but locals believe each lake holds a different kind of soul. One for the old, one for the young, and one for those who died suddenly. It's a place full of contrasts, like all of Flores itself. Rammang-Rammang. The cliffs have been here for millions of years. The village came much later. In the heart of South Sulawesi, Rammang-Rammang is part of one of the largest karst landscapes on Earth. Limestone cliffs rise straight from rice paddies and wetlands, carved over millennia by rain and wind. Tucked between the stone is a quiet village called Barua. Just a few dozen families live here in wooden stilt houses surrounded by cliffs and clouds. Most grow rice or fish in the flooded fields. Life moves slowly, shaped by the land, the river, and the rain. To reach Barua, you follow the Pute River by boat. It's a 20-minute ride through still water and narrow channels. The cliffs reflect so clearly, it's hard to tell what's sky and what's stone. In the early morning, mist hangs low over the fields. That's why it's called Rammang-Rammang, which means cloud in the local language. It's a quiet place where people live close to the earth. The cliffs feel permanent. The village feels temporary. But together, they've made a home, peaceful, hidden, and full of life. Samosir Island. Roughly the size of Singapore, Samosir Island sits at the center of Lake Toba, but its story begins deep beneath the surface, inside one of the most powerful volcanoes in Earth's history. Around 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano in northern Sumatra erupted with enough force to alter global weather and darken the skies for years. The explosion left behind a massive crater, more than 100 kilometers long, which slowly filled with water to become what we now call Lake Toba. the largest volcanic lake in the world. But the eruption didn't just leave a void. Long after the blast, a new uplift formed within the caldera itself, pushing up a mountainous island from below. That island is Samosir, an enormous landform born from fire and pressure. Surrounded by steep caldera walls and deep water, Samosir became home to the Batak Toba people, one of Indonesia's oldest cultural groups. For generations, they remained cut off from the outside world, preserving their beliefs, architecture, and traditions. But change reaches even the quietest places. One of the most remarkable cultural sites on the island is Huta Sialagan, a centuries-old walled village built from volcanic stone. Within its walls stand several traditional Batak houses, raised on wooden stilts with sharply pointed roofs and intricately carved gables. Beneath them, shaded open areas once served as meeting places, where village elders held trials and delivered sentences in accordance with ancient customs. It's on Samosir Island that many visitors first encounter the Samosir dance, a ceremonial performance that weaves together music, movement, and storytelling to honor the island's history and beliefs. During the performance, dancers wear ulos, traditional hand-woven cloths dyed in deep reds and blacks, often draped over the shoulders or tied around the waist. They move in circles, hands raised, echoing the rhythms of ritual and community. Beyond the villages, nature frames every story. Ephrata waterfalls spill down a broad rock face in wide-tiered sheets. The water flows in steady layers, spreading across the dark stone before collecting in a shallow pool at the base. The falls appear almost symmetrical, cut neatly into the hillside like a natural staircase. Across the island and its shores, lakeside resorts and homestays welcome travelers into the rhythm of daily life. These places are modest but memorable, where mornings open to still water and evenings close with music drifting from nearby homes. The road climbs, winding more than 7 kilometers along the cliffside until it meets the summit of Sibaya Baya Hill. The view from above is staggering. The lake stretches to the horizon, mist moves across the surface, and the cliffs drop away into water and sky. Wakatobi National Park. In the remote waters of southeast Sulawesi, Wakatobi National Park is one of the most biodiverse marine ecosystems on Earth, home to over 750 species of coral and thousands of marine creatures. Spanning 1.39 million hectares, its waters are among the clearest in the world. Beneath the surface, vast coral reefs sprawl like underwater cities. These living structures provide shelter, food, and breeding grounds. forming a delicate balance where every organism plays a role. One of the park's most stunning formations appears during low tide when a sandbar emerges, creating a natural circle around a brilliant blue lagoon. This fleeting spectacle vanishes as the tide rises, leaving behind only open water. Once difficult to reach, Wakatobi has now opened its doors to the world, offering diving, snorkeling, and ecotourism experiences. It remains one of Indonesia's last true marine sanctuaries. Kelok 9 Bridge. For decades, this mountain pass was a bottleneck, sharp turns carved into cliffs too narrow for modern traffic. In 2013, all that changed. Kelok 9, meaning 9 turns, was rebuilt as a series of bridges and elevated roads. Over 900 meters of structure now stretch across the valley, supported by massive concrete pillars with the old winding road still visible below. It connects West Sumatra to the rest of the island, and it turned a once dangerous climb into one of the most iconic roadways in Indonesia. Bukittinggi. For centuries, Bukittinggi has stood at the heart of West Sumatra, first as a trading post, then a colonial stronghold, and later a symbol of resistance. During Indonesia's struggle for independence, it became the temporary capital of the new republic. It's home to the Minangkabau people, one of the world's only matrilineal cultures. At the center of the city stands Jam Gadang, a clock tower built by the Dutch in 1926. Its mechanism was imported from Rotterdam, identical to the one in London's Big Ben. Now a national landmark, its 4 faces rise above the rooftops, visible from nearly every part of the city, marking time through decades of change. Just beyond the edge of town, the land opens suddenly. Garai Sianak Canyon drops sharply into the earth, forming a green gorge carved by shifting plates and endless rain. Its cliffs are steep and almost vertical in places, with layers of rock exposed like pages in a book. Below, rice paddies stretch in neat lines beside a narrow river that winds through bamboo groves and forest. The canyon changes with the light. In the morning, mist hangs low, softening the edges of rock and leaf. By noon, the cliffs stand bare and bright. There are still trails that lead from the city down into the canyon, old footpaths used by farmers and families. From above, it feels remote. From within, it feels alive. Belitung Island. For years, Belitung fueled the world. It was one of the largest tin-producing regions on Earth. Mines ran deep, machines carved through the land, and the island's future seemed certain. But when the tin ran out, everything stopped. What remained was silence. And in that silence, something else appeared. Raw, untouched beauty. Stripped of its mining industry, the island's natural features were finally revealed. At Tanjung Tinggi Beach, giant granite boulders rise from the shoreline like sleeping giants, shaped by centuries of wind and sea. Some are over 250 million years old, silent, immovable, and older than the island itself. The sand is pale and fine, almost white beneath the sun. The beach gained national fame after being featured in the Indonesian film Laskar Pelangi, The Rainbow Troops, a story of childhood, resilience, and hope that captured hearts across the country. Out at sea, a lone lighthouse towers over Lengkuas Island, built by the Dutch in 1882. From its peak, there's only sky, reef, and ocean, an endless horizon that humbles you. High above the trees, Batu Baginda stands like a guardian of the land. Locals call it a sacred stone. The path is steep, but from the summit, the island opens up. And through it all, the people dance. The Balitong dance is slow and ceremonial, a memory passed through motion, a reminder of who they are and what they've kept alive. This island may have lost its industry, but it found its soul. Pura Tanah Lot. Sea snakes guard its base, born from a priest's sash, placed there to protect the gods. That's the story told around Pura Tanah Lot, one of Bali's most sacred sea temples. It was built in the 16th century by the wandering priest Dang Hyang Nirartha, who, according to legend, spent a night meditating on the rocky islet. He believed the spot was spiritually powerful, where the forces of the ocean met the energy of the land. Before he left, he instructed local fishermen to build a shrine on the rock, and so they did. The temple stands alone on that jagged formation just offshore, cut off from the mainland each time the tide returns. The waves strike from every side, carving deep channels into the base, but the temple holds. Its structure is modest but unmistakable. Tiered Meru roofs made of black palm fiber rise above a weathered stone base. Visitors cross the temple at low tide, stepping barefoot across the slippery path, but only Hindus may enter the inner sanctum. Tanah Lot is part of a sacred chain of sea temples placed around the Balinese coast, each within sight of the next. Together, they are said to form a spiritual barrier, protecting the island from unseen forces and from forgetting what matters most. Banda Aceh. Once the center of the Aceh Sultanate, the city is now shaped by both its Islamic heritage and the memory of one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history. In 2004, a tsunami struck with almost no warning. Entire neighborhoods were swept away, but the city rebuilt, slowly and with purpose. In the heart of it stands the Baitur Grand Mosque, with 7 black domes that rise above the city. Built by the Dutch in the 1870s after a local rebellion, it was once seen as a symbol of foreign control. But over time, it became something else entirely. A local symbol of strength after surviving the tsunami nearly untouched. A long causeway stretches west from the city, crossing low water toward Ule Lewe. The road is straight and flat, bordered by seawalls and rows of planted mangroves. At the end sits the harbor, where ferries dock beside concrete piers and breakwaters curl out like arms against the tide. The shoreline still carries signs of what came before, but the harbor has since been rebuilt, holding firm where everything once collapsed. Every few years, Aceh Cultural Week brings the city to life. Music, dance, and craft traditions from across the region are celebrated in one place. It's part festival, part remembrance, and a chance to show how Acehnese identity continues to evolve. Prambanan Temple. The largest Hindu temple complex in Indonesia, Prambanan rises from the plains of central Java like a city of stone towers. From a distance, the temples look like dark mountains, built from volcanic stone and shaped by centuries of sun, rain, and wind. The complex was dedicated to the 3 main gods in Hindu belief: Shiva the destroyer, Vishnu the preserver, and Brahma the creator. The central temple for Shiva rises 47 meters high, surrounded by smaller shrines arranged in careful lines. Prambanan is believed to have been built in the 9th century by the Sanjaya dynasty, at a time when Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms coexisted on the island of Java. In its original form, Prambanan had more than 200 temples, but over the centuries, many were damaged or destroyed by earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. What remains today is a carefully restored core complex, sharp-edged, dark stone spires rising above the plains. Even in ruins, the design is precise. Each temple faces east, aligned with Hindu cosmic beliefs. The symmetry, the carvings, and the scale all reflect the deep devotion of the people who built it. It remains one of the greatest surviving examples of Hindu architecture in Southeast Asia. Banda Islands. Once considered the most valuable islands on Earth, the Bandas became the center of a global power struggle, all for a single tree. In the 1600s, nutmeg grew only here, and at the time, it was worth more than gold. This remote chain of volcanic islands sits in the Banda Sea at the far edge of Maluku. The main islands, Banda Nera, Banda Besar, Hatta, and Gunung Api, form a tight ring around deep ocean waters and ancient trade routes. Gunung Api rises at the center, a near-perfect cone. Its steep slopes are scarred by eruptions and covered in volcanic ash. Locals call it the Fire Mountain, a presence both feared and respected, shaping the land and sea around it. The coral reefs that encircle the islands thrive in these mineral-rich waters, making this one of the most biodiverse marine regions in the world. Above the port of Banda Nera, Fort Belgica still watches the sea. Its star-shaped walls rise from the hilltop, built by the Dutch to protect their monopoly. Though the cannons are gone, the structure remains, perfect in its geometry and massive against the hillside. But Banda's culture was never fully erased. Each year, wooden war canoes race across the bay in a traditional kora-kora competition. Rowers move in perfect unison, drums echo from the shoreline, and cheers carry across the water an echo of resistance and memory. A short boat ride leads to Hatta Island. Coral gardens stretch just offshore, and the coastline hums with stillness. In 1936, long before independence, the Dutch exiled Indonesia's future vice president, Muhammad Hatta, to this quiet island, and it was his presence that gave the island its name. The Banda Islands once shaped empires. Today, it moves at a slower pace, but the stories remain in the ruins, in the reef, and in the silence between waves. Sipiso-Piso Falls. At the northern edge of Lake Toba, near the highland village of Tongging, Sipiso-Piso Falls plunges from a sheer cliff into a deep gorge carved into the rim of the caldera. It is one of the tallest waterfalls in Indonesia, dropping 120 meters in a single narrow stream that sprays white mist into the air before vanishing into the trees below. The name Sipiso-Piso comes from the local Batak word for knife, a reference to the sharp, slender shape of the cascade as it slices down the rock face. The surrounding cliffs are steep and exposed, offering sweeping views of both the waterfall and the volcanic landscape it cuts through. A long stone staircase leads visitors from the rim to the base of the falls, winding down through fields and ridges with shifting views at every turn. From the bottom, the cliffs rise like walls on all sides, and the falls thunder down into a hidden basin, untouched except for the path that brought you there. Bromo Tengger Semeru National Park. In East Java, there's a place where the entire landscape moves with fire, wind, and faith. Bromo Tengger Semeru stretches across high plains and volcanic peaks. It's a world built on ash, shaped by gods and carried forward by belief. Inside its borders lie Mount Semeru, the Tengger Caldera, and Mount Bromo. Together, they form one of the most dramatic and sacred landscapes in Indonesia. At the southern edge, Mount Semeru stands tallest. Smoke rises from its peak every 20 minutes, never explosive but steady, like a pulse. North of Semeru, the land drops into the Tengger Caldera. What was once a massive volcano collapsed in on itself long ago, leaving behind cliffs and ridges that hold the wind. At its center lies the Sea of Sand, a wide basin of pale volcanic dust. Nothing grows here. It's open and flat and quiet. But sometimes through the gray, a lone rider passes. A Tenggerese horseman, moving slowly across the ash, heading toward the mountain that still smokes. Mount Batok sits inside the Tengger Caldera, shaped like a perfect cone with steep, furrowed slopes. Unlike the other volcanoes nearby, it's completely dormant and covered in patches of green vegetation. Though it's no longer active, Batok holds cultural and spiritual significance for the Tenggerese people, who see it as a sacred part of their ancestral land. Just beside it, Mount Bromo emerges from the same caldera, a massive basin created after a violent eruption over 45,000 years ago. It's not the tallest, but it draws the most reverence. The climb to the rim is steep, up a long staircase cut into the cone. Those who reach the top find a view into the living heart of the earth, often hidden behind fog or thick white clouds. On some days, the whole caldera disappears. On others, it opens wide, exposing the scars of time and heat. The people who live here are the Tenggerese, descendants of old Majapahit settlers who fled into the mountains centuries ago. Each year, during the ritual of Yajna-Kasada, they bring offerings to Mount Bromo. The gifts are thrown into the crater, sacrifices to the mountain god, asking for protection and thanking it for life. But the park is more than myth and eruption. It shifts. Trails vanish into dust. Forests cling to the outer ridges, and narrow paths lead from farmland into highland. Mentawai Archipelago. Over 100 islands stretch off the west coast of Sumatra, scattered across deep blue water and surrounded by rainforest. This is the Mentawai Archipelago, one of the most remote island chains in Indonesia. The archipelago is famous among surfers. Sephora and the Pagai Islands draw people from around the world with their strong, perfect waves. But beyond the beaches, the interior remains untouched. Roads are rare, and many areas can still only be reached by canoe or footpath. The largest island, Siberut, is home to the Mentawai people, an indigenous community believed to have arrived thousands of years ago. Separated from the mainland, their culture developed in near complete isolation. Traditional longhouses called uma stand on stilts above the jungle floor. Families live together under one roof, surrounded by animals and firewood. The Mentawai are known for their tattoos, sharpened teeth, and deep bond with the natural world. The forest shapes their lives. The sea isolates them. And through it all, their traditions endure. Bandung. They once called it the Paris of Java, a city shaped by mountains and cooled by altitude, where colonial villas and leafy streets once drew artists, scholars, and weekenders from Jakarta. Bandung lies in a wide basin in the highlands of West Java, surrounded by volcanoes and ringed by terraced hillsides. Neighborhoods unfold in dense layers, rooftops almost touching, narrow streets threading between them, and homes painted in soft pastels or left raw in concrete. But Bandung has never just been a quiet place in the hills. It's one of Indonesia's most forward-looking cities, fueled by youth culture, design, and education. Dozens of universities and creative hubs shape the city's identity, with ideas spreading from independent studios and fashion stalls before making their way to Jakarta. Cutting across the northern districts, the Pasupati Bridge rises over homes and markets, a 2.8-kilometer cable-stayed structure that links east and west. It was one of the first bridges in Indonesia to use vibration-dampening technology, but it's also part of daily life now, used by thousands of people each day. Further east, the Cisumdawu Twin Tunnel dives through the highland, connecting Bandung to Kertajati Airport and beyond. Each tunnel is over 400 meters long, part of a broader effort to open new trade routes and reduce travel time across West Java. As the city gives way to open hills, tea plantations begin to roll across the northern landscape. In places like Ciater and Lembang, rows of tea bushes follow the curve of the land, planted by hand and harvested in morning mist. Many have been worked for generations, with knowledge passed quietly from one family to the next. South of the city, the earth shifts. Kawah Putih, a crater lake formed by a violent eruption, sits silent and sulfurous at the forest's edge. The water shifts with the light, from pale blue to ghostly white, surrounded by scorched trees and curling mist. It feels like another world, just hours from the city streets. Bandung doesn't sit still. It stretches and reinvents, balancing the old with the new, the volcanic with the human. Sulawesi. Shaped like no other island in Indonesia, Sulawesi's coastlines reach in every direction, broken into narrow fingers of land. In many places, the road disappears into mountain or sea, but this separation has preserved some of the country's most distinct traditions and wildest terrain. In the northern highlands, the Toraja people have lived for centuries among sharp cliffs and thick forest. At the entrance to the region, two landmarks rise above the valley: a giant statue with outstretched arms, and a mountaintop cross with bold letters that spell Toraja Utara. The capital of South Sulawesi, Makassar, is one of the largest cities in Indonesia. Once known as Ujung Pandang, it served as the capital of the Goa Sultanate, a powerful maritime kingdom that controlled much of eastern Indonesia. Traders from across Asia docked here, and the city grew not just from commerce, but from the movement of people, stories, and beliefs. Along the waterfront, the 99 Domes Mosque rises like a sculpture of light and stone. Its bright orange domes catch the sun at every hour, a symbol of faith built beside the sea. Deep in the forest, the cascade waterfalls break through the hills in long, tumbling streams. Each fall is different, some wide and shallow, others tall and narrow, with pools forming in between. It's not a single place, but a cluster of hidden spots locals refer to by the same name. Sulawesi is many places at once, but in the mountains or by the sea, the connection to land and tradition holds firm. Labuan Bajo. On the western edge of Flores, Labuan Bajo curves around a sheltered harbor, framed by steep hills and scattered islands just beyond the shore. The water here is calm. Wooden fishing boats rest beside long piers, their reflections drifting with the tide. From above, the town spills down the hillside toward the coast, where nearly every road ends at the harbor. It lies in a region shaped as much by faith as by geography. Flores is predominantly Catholic, and the town reflects that quiet rhythm: hilltop crosses, seaside chapels, and local festivals that feel far removed from the traditions of Bali or Java. In recent years, the town has been marked for transformation. It's one of Indonesia's 10 new Balis, a national strategy to turn lesser-known destinations into global tourist hubs. Labuan Bajo is now the gateway to Komodo National Park, and everything that follows. Komodo National Park. Scattered through the Flores Sea, Komodo National Park spans 3 main islands: Komodo, Rinca, and Padar. Located between Sumbawa and Flores in eastern Indonesia, the park covers more than 1,700 square kilometers of land and ocean. The islands are dry for much of the year, lined with thorny trees, steep ridges, and long stretches of brittle hills that fade into green during the rainy season. Some islands rise high with exposed cliffs, while others barely break the surface. Padar Island sits in the heart of the park, shaped like a broken trident. From the air, it looks torn. Peaks stretch up from a spine of land while deep bays cut inward, carving the island into 3 curved sections. Each bay cradles a different beach, one white, one black, and one pink. The slopes are dry and golden most of the year, dotted with brush and brittle grass. When the rains come, green returns in patches, but even then, the land stays bare and strange. From the summit, the island feels like a miniature world: land, water, and sky. Komodo's coral reefs are some of the richest in the world, known for their clarity, biodiversity, and color. Soft corals drift with the currents, and the seafloor shifts between color and shadow. But the same currents that bring life also bring danger. The waters around Komodo are known for their intensity, which makes the reefs both fragile and thriving. But the most iconic life form here walks on land. The Komodo dragon, an ancient predator reaching up to 3 meters and weighing over 70 kilograms, has lived on these islands for millions of years. They are the largest lizards on Earth. These creatures are living relics of a prehistoric world. Their numbers have declined over the decades due to habitat loss, human encroachment, and poaching. But the park was created in part to stop this. Strict protections now limit how many people can enter certain areas, and the dragons are monitored closely. To see one in the wild is to feel the island's age. Much of the park remains unreachable, except by boat. There are no permanent settlements inside the park, only small ranger posts and controlled tourism zones. Komodo National Park is not made for ease. It feels remote, even now, but for those who do make the journey, it reveals itself slowly. Bali. Often called the Island of the Gods, Bali is one of Indonesia's smallest provinces, yet one of its most well-known and visited. It's long been a crossroads of religion, ritual, and art. And while the island is often seen as a tourist destination, entire villages still revolve around ceremony, craft, and rice farming. The rice terraces in Tegalalang village tell this story. They rise in steps along the hills, carved into the earth with precision. From above, the terraces form a living topographic map. Narrow footpaths trace the edges, dipping into patches of dense forest at the lower levels. Along them, workers walk in silence, wearing wide-brimmed hats and balancing woven baskets across their shoulders. Each day they tend the terraces by hand, moving with focus as they shape the earth and guide the water through its paths. Scattered between the ridges are wooden huts and small homes, perched just above the paddies. In one clearing, a long rope swing hangs from a tall bamboo frame, part lookout, part moment of stillness. It's not just farming. It's a centuries-old system of harmony called subak, a cooperative way of sharing water that has kept this land alive since the 9th century. Deeper into the forest, another kind of order exists. The Ubud monkey forest is home to over 1,000 long-tailed macaques, living freely among crumbling temples and banyan trees. These monkeys have lived here for generations, woven into the mythology and daily life of the area. They roam in groups, grooming each other on stone ledges or leaping across the statues. Some steal food from tourists. Others sit quietly, watching everything that moves. The forest feels ancient, thick with vines, moss-covered walls, and paths that disappear into the undergrowth. The monkeys are protected here, not just by conservation law, but by belief. In Balinese Hinduism, they're seen as sacred, guardians of the forest and the spirits within it. The temples they inhabit, some dating back to the 14th century, were built for more than worship. They were built with the animals in mind. Where the forest ends, water takes over. Sekumpul Waterfall doesn't fall in one stream, but many. Thin white ribbons unraveling down a 100-meter cliff face draped in vines and moss. The trail winds through jungle, down steep steps slick with moisture, and past trees tangled in root and vine. From the upper overlooks, the scale is staggering. Dozens of streams cascading side by side into a rocky basin far below. At the base, the water crashes onto smooth boulders with a deep, continuous roar, up to 100 liters a second in the rainy season. Many call it the most beautiful waterfall in all of Indonesia, and from here, it's hard to argue otherwise. At the southernmost point of Bali, limestone cliffs rise like a barricade between land and sea. Melasti Beach stretches beneath them, long, narrow, and pale gold in color. The sand here is finer than on most parts of the island, and the water glows a bright turquoise. When the tide pulls back, it leaves behind shallow tide pools dotted with coral and seaweed, scattered like pieces of reef on smooth stone. Along the shoreline, the remains of an old wooden ship sit tilted in the sand. No one's sure how long it's been there. Some say decades, but it's never been removed and has become part of the beach itself. The beach is known for its ceremonies. Locals gather here in white dress to cleanse themselves before holy days. The ritual is called Milasti, a cleansing of the spirit and body using the sea. Then, the island drops away. Uluwatu Cliff rises over 70 meters above the Indian Ocean, a steep wall of limestone that meets the sea with no warning. The waves below are constant, pounding the base of the cliff with force that never lets up. Perched at the very edge is Uluwatu Temple, one of Bali's oldest sea temples. Its stone walls follow the cliff line, narrow and unguarded. Built in the 11th century, it was placed here to protect the island from forces believed to come from the open south. A colossal statue rises 121 meters high, nearly as tall as the Statue of Liberty. Located in Garuda Wisnu Kenkana, the statue shows the god Vishnu riding the mythical eagle of Garuda. Made from over 3,000 tons of copper and brass, it took decades to complete. The statue was built to stand watch over the island, a reminder of cosmic balance and protection. That same sense of protection and passage takes a different form at Handara Gate. Towering nearly 10 meters high, it's shaped like a temple cleaved down the middle, two stone walls flanking an open space in perfect symmetry. It looks ancient and sacred, like a gateway to a lost kingdom, but behind it lies something far more ordinary, a golf course. Built in the traditional Candi Bentar style, the gate wasn't meant to be a tourist attraction, but it's become one of the most photographed sites in Bali. At Tega Nungan Waterfall, the water doesn't trickle, it crashes. A thick column pours over the cliff and into a wide rocky pool below. Wooden huts sit near the edge, and a trail leads to a lookout where the full waterfall comes into view. You can see how the river carves through the forest and how the water spreads out at the bottom. Not far from the waterfall is the Blangsinga Glass Bridge. It stretches about 188 meters across the same gorge, with a clear glass floor that lets you see straight through to the Petanu River. Bali ends the journey, but not the pattern. It's where Indonesia narrows into a single island and leaves nothing behind.